Are you somebody that's new to canning? You've never canned before, or you're new to it but you don't want to go to the next step? Well, I've got you covered in this video. This video is a part of a collaboration called Plan to Can, and it is hosted by the Miller Life Kitchen and Jenny from JENI'S Scratch Made Kitchen. And we are going to show you some easy recipes that you can use to can. And I'm going to take you step by step through each recipe, and I'm going to show you how I do it, the process. It's going to be really easy. Don't be afraid. I know if you're like me, you thought that you were going to make your house explode, the canner was going to explode, or you're going to poison somebody. Trust me, if you do it the right way and use trusted sources, and you're going to be fine, and you're going to love it, and you're going to be obsessed over it. Because I know I was scared. It took me a year to go from water bathing to pressure canning. It's not scary if you do it right and you use the trusted websites and books out there. And I have got this book. Pick it up at Walmart. You can pick it up there, or you can even get it on Amazon. If you're starting out, you want this book because it's got really easy recipes that you can start with. And the recipe that I'm going to show you for water bathing only takes 3 ingredients. And the other one, the meat one that I'm going to show you that I pressure canned, it only takes 2 ingredients, meat and salt. So they're 2 really easy recipes, and I will walk you through them and show you my entire process. So don't be scared, and I'm going to give you a plan to can. So let's go ahead and get started.
Before we get started, I thought I would show you a little about the book. It shows you about headspace on your jars. It also shows you about molds and yeast and what temperatures they are killed in the canning process. It gives you all kinds of equipment advice for canning. It gives you ideas on what you need to start out with. It will take you step by step through the water bath canning process. It will take you through the water bath and the pressure canning process. So this is very helpful to new canners as well as old canners like me. So I highly recommend you picking this up. I know they sell it at Walmart, and they also sell it on Amazon, but I do know that they're coming out with a newer version, but I still like to keep all the books, so I'll be getting that one too. And we're going to start out with one of the easiest recipes in this book, and it's pineapple. The recipe calls for 3 pineapples, so that's what I got. So you're going to just cut these up into 1-inch chunks, and then we're going to make a simple syrup. You're either going to make a light syrup, a medium syrup, or a heavy syrup to use. So that is the hardest thing you're going to do, is cut up these pineapples. And I'm going to start on the syrup. I started to make the medium one, but it was a lot of sugar. So I went ahead and I'm doing the light version, and I will have the recipe linked down below in the description box. And it does look like brown sugar, but it's white sugar. It's just an organic kind, so it's a little bit more brown looking. But all I'm going to do is add water to that, and that's it. You're just making a syrup, and I'm going to stir this up really well, and I'm going to turn the burner on, and I'm going to bring this up to high, and I'm going to stir it pretty constantly and make sure it doesn't burn, and that's it. Besides cutting up the pineapple, that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started boiling. And I don't use tap water. I usually buy one of these every time I go to Walmart, and that way I have some on hand. And you know how water is. If you don't have a well, it usually has fluoride and chlorine in it, so I don't want all that in my canning. So I just keep that water on hand, and I use that instead of tap water. Alright, I've got my jars. I've washed them really well in some soapy hot water, and I added some water to my pot, and I'm heating that up, and I've got the jar's about half full with some water, and I just use tap water for this. And you don't want them to boil, you just want them to come to a simmer and stay there and stay hot until you get your pineapple ready to put into the jars. And make sure you go by the recipe exactly. And this one says that it takes 6 pints or 3 quarts. So I always make sure that I have 1 or 2 extra jars, just so I don't have to run back and forth, and I have them here just in case I need them. So that is one thing that I would really emphasize, is make sure you read that recipe and know it back and forth so you don't make any kind of mistakes, because that is really, really important to read your recipe. And now I'm going to take my pineapple and put it in my boiling, I want to say broth all the time, but it's syrup. I'm putting it into my boiling syrup, and I'm going to let the pineapple get hot. It's take about 5 minutes. And I'm going to show you my headspace. This one calls for 1/2 inch headspace, but the bottom of the jar here right at the rim is 1 inch. So you're going to go up halfway, and that is where our headspace is going to be, 1/2 an inch. That is very important, as well as reading your recipe. And now my pineapple is ready, so I'm going to go ahead and fill up my jar. I have a hot jar, and I'm going to put the hot product in there. That is always important. And I'm going to use my funnel to make it less of a messy process, because it's really going to be messy putting that, I want to say broth again, putting the hot syrup in there. So the recipe says to put the pineapple in first, and then you're going to ladle in the hot broth, not broth, the hot syrup in there. So make sure, that's another thing, make sure you read your recipe so you don't just put a bunch of pineapple and juice in there at one time. So make sure you do it very carefully, because that is some hot sugar water, and that will burn you if it gets on your skin. So I'm going to ladle that in there, and I'm going to try to get as close to 1/2 of an inch. All right, I'm going to take a skewer. You want to use any kind of non-metallic tool and get the air bubbles out. You're just going to move the pineapple around and make sure that all the air bubbles have came to the top. That way it doesn't mess with your seal. Just make sure it's not metal, because you could break your jar. And then after you do that, just make sure that your headspace is still at 1/2 of an inch. And if it's not, just add some more of the liquid to it. I'm calling it liquid, not broth. So that's about 1/2 of an inch. So now I'm going to take a wet paper towel, and I'm going to wipe the rim of the jar. That way nothing messes with the seal, because you want to make sure all your jars seal. So now I'm going to take my lid and rings. I have washed these with hot soapy water. Make sure you don't use those but once. You can always use your rings again, but you're not going to be able to, or you're going to reuse your rings, but you don't want to reuse your lids. So I'm going to put it on there finger tight, not really tight, just enough to get it closed. And I'm going to add that to my pot with my hot jars, and I'll get another jar out and I'll show you another jar, so you'll have this down. But it's really easy. Just take your pineapple, put it in your jar, then take your liquid, pour that over there, get all the air bubbles out, and then wipe your jar, the rim of your jar clean, put your lid and your ring on there, and put it back in the pot. I'm going to take some of the pineapple out, because you don't want the pineapple or anything you're canning to go above the liquid. So I'm going to go ahead and debubble again, and I need a little bit more of the liquid to go over the top, and then I will wipe off the rim of the jar, and I'll put my lid and ring on there and put them in the pot, and we'll get ready to start canning. And I think this is actually the first time that it worked out perfect. I got 6 jars. I didn't have anything left over. So I'm going to go ahead and put that lid on and put it in the pot, and we'll get the timer started. And you want to make sure that you get the jars covered by at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So I'm going to fill a pitcher up, and I'll pour the rest of that water in here and get that to 1 inch over the jars. And I'm going to put my lid on, and now I'm going to set my timer. When it comes to a rolling boil, set your timer for 15 minutes, and that's it. We'll come back in 15 minutes. Let's set my timer. All right, my 15 minutes is up, so I'm going to turn the burner off. I will take the lid off very carefully, and in 5 minutes, I'll come back. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. I'm going to very carefully place them on a towel. You want to put them in a place where there's no draft, and that you can leave them for 12 to 24 hours undisturbed. So don't even tilt the jar, just let that water stick on there, because that will evaporate in just a few minutes. So make sure you don't tilt the jars, but just let them sit there on the towel for 12 to 24 hours undisturbed, and they should be dinging. And if they don't, I usually give them about 30 minutes to an hour, but I find that if they have not sealed within an hour or so and that vacuum pull down, then it's probably not going to happen. And mine took about 30 minutes for all of them to seal, but just leave them there undisturbed until the next day, and then we'll wash the jars. You'll take the rings off. You will write pineapple on there and the date you canned them, and I bet they're going to be really good. I can't believe I've never done this before, but I found that this was one of the easiest recipes in that book, so I cannot wait to make some pineapple upside down cake with these. And I thought I would show you a rack that I made with just some canning rings. I have got some bread ties that, I'm a hoarder, so I've got plenty of bread ties in my junk drawer. So I just tied these together. So if you don't have a rack and you just have a really tall pot and with a lid, you don't need this kind of ball canning pot. You don't need to spend all that much money. But get you a tall stock pot, get you these rings and tie them either with the bread ties, or you could probably use zip ties and tie that together, and it will make a perfect rack. So now my jars have sealed, and now I'm going to put them on my shelf, and they're going to make some delicious desserts. So I hope you enjoy this recipe, and now we're going to go ahead and move on to the pressure canning. I have some beef roast in my freezer, so I thawed them out in the fridge, and now I'm going to cut them up and can them. And these came from a cow that my sister and we went in half because it was their cow, so they had it butchered, and these are really going to be fresh and delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and take them out of the bags and cut them up. But first I'm going to take as much of the fat off as I can. You don't have to take all the fat off. There's no way that you can take all the fat out of the beef, but we're going to try and get as much as we can, and I'm going to cut them into some large chunks. And you could also do this with chicken. It's the same concept. We're just going to use salt and meat. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my meat chopped up into cubes, and then we'll get it canned up. All right, I've got my water getting a little bit warm in my pressure canner, and I've got my jars all clean. I've washed them in some hot soapy water, and I'm going to add salt to them. This has got two ingredients. It's got salt and it's got meat. That's all it is. It's so easy to start out with, especially if you've never canned anything in a pressure canner before. This is an easy recipe. So I am just going to add a teaspoon of salt. If it is quart jars, you would add 2. So I'm going to go ahead and add the salt. And this is the only time you're going to stage your jars. That means putting all your jars out and filling all your jars at one time. They do not recommend that you do that. So if you're using a hot broth and hot jars, you want to do one jar at a time. But since we're doing a cold jar and cold meat, we can do this, and that's the only reason why we're doing that. And just like we're doing a raw pack, so if you're doing chicken, it'll be the same concept. Just cut up your chicken and put the salt in there and put your chicken in there. And I will link the recipes that I have already done down below if you want to try them. And this is kind of like a game of Jenga. You just want to kind of get the meat placed in the jar, but you don't want to pack it all down. But you want to make sure that you don't have any holes. Well, there, I guess the cat's going to eat that one. You don't want any air pockets in there. So I'm going to fill up the jar to 1-inch headspace, which that means the rim of the jar right there. So I'm going to do a generous 1-inch headspace. So I'm going to go ahead and fill up all of my jars with the meat, and then we'll come back and we'll get it ready to can. Okay, I've washed my lids and my rings, so I'm going to put those on, and then we'll put it in the canner. All right, now they're ready to go. I've got the water. It's not going to be hot. It's not going to be cold. It's going to be kind of warm. You don't want your cold jars with your cold meat to go in there with some hot water. It's going to come up to temperature gently, and that way we won't have a chance of the jars breaking. So now I'm going to add my jars to the bottom of the pot, and now I'm going to put my lid on. This is one thing that I've really had to practice with. That lid has always been tricky to me, but it has some arrows, so you know that both sides have an arrow, so you know how to just line it up. But it takes practice, and you can do this with just water. Just put water in your jars and practice this until you get comfortable with it. And here is my gauge. This recipe is going to be 10 pounds of pressure. That's for my area. You might have a higher elevation. Just check your book and make sure that you're doing it to your elevation. And it's going to go between 10 and 11. And this is my weight. It did not come with my canner, but it is so much easier to use the weight than the regulator, which came with my canner. And but this is 5 pounds without any kind of weight on it. So I'm going to add this weight, which is 5 pounds, and that will make it 10 pounds, which is what I need to can with. And if you need 15, you'll put the other weight on, and it'll be a 15-pound weight. So you can buy this at any hardware store, and I just like it better than the regulator, because the regulator you would have to watch the gauge, and with this you know that it's 10 pounds. So we're going to go ahead and vent this. So this is going to be where the steam is going to come out, and you want a steady stream coming out of there before you put your weight on. You want to eliminate all the air in your canner, and you want to wait till you get a steady stream of steam. And it's really hard to pick up with the camera, so please just take my word for it. But I'm going to wait till it becomes a steady stream, and after 10 minutes of that, then we'll start the canning process. Thought I would show you some things that my canner does. Like, it leaks sometimes. That's fine. It happens sometimes. This thing jiggles like crazy. It's really loud sometimes, but that's perfectly normal. Sometimes when you use a pressure canner, it just kind of makes you nervous, but it comes with practice. You don't be nervous. So now it has been 10 minutes, so I'm going to add my weight on there, and we're going to wait till it comes up to 10 pounds of pressure. When it comes to 10 pounds, that weight will start rocking back and forth. And that's kind of how I know that my gauge is working. But this thing took forever to get to 10 pounds. I don't know why. I guess because I was doing this late and I was tired, but I'm like, this is going to take forever. It did finally come up there, but it took like 30 minutes. So it could take 10 minutes. It could take 30 minutes. So just hang in there. So now mine is at 10. So now my weight is going to start jiggling. And that's how I know that I am at 10 pounds of pressure. Do not let it go under 10 pounds of pressure. If it does, you have to start the whole process over again. So make sure you keep an eye on that and keep it at 10 and not under at all. It can go a little bit over, but it cannot go under. You have to start all over again, completely all over again. So that's why that is very important. So I'm going to go ahead and start my timer. I'm using pints, so it's 75 minutes. So it went for 75 minutes, and now I'm going to turn off my heat, and it was at a little bit over 10 pounds. And when that thing goes down and you're at 0, you are done. So that takes a little bit, but that is down, and when I hear that clink, I know it's done. So now I can take my weight off, and I'm going to wait another 10 minutes. And then we'll be able to open up our lid and see what we've got. And now I've got my towel down again, just like the pineapple. You want it in a place where you don't get a draft and where you can leave it undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. Same thing with anything pressure canned. So it was like midnight, and I had my pajamas on, so don't judge me. So I got a little bit burned on my hands, so I had to grab some pot holders. So I grabbed those pot holders and got that lid off. Just make sure you don't burn yourself, because that water is hot, especially like if you're barefooted or something, you'll get that hot water on you. So just be careful. I'm going to put that in my sink, and then I'm always scared that I'll see some glass floating or something, but they look really good. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully take this out, and look at me bumping it on the side of the canner. But you want to just come straight up and down. You don't want to tilt the jars, and you just want to do this very carefully. Don't put them too close together. You want some air to circulate between the two jars. So they are gonna boil for a little bit, but just don't touch them. Just leave them there for 12 to 24 hours, and then we'll come back tomorrow and check on them and make sure that they're all sealed. And now I can go to bed. So good night. I'll see y'all in the morning. So look at these jars. They look pretty good. They still have a little bit of fat in there, but you're not going to get all the fat out. And I'm going to take the lids, or I'm going to take the rings off, and I'm going to wash the jars, and I'm going to write beef on there and the date that they were canned, and they came out perfect. They're not all the way covered with liquid, but that's fine because I use them up pretty quickly, and they would discolor if you leave them like that for a long period of time, but I've still ate them like that, and they were still fine. This is just a really quick and easy way to get some canning done, especially if your freezer's like mine and it's full and I needed to get some stuff out of there. And also, it's good to tug on your jars. Make sure you press in the middle and make sure they're really sealed. I hope you learned something. Let me know how long you've been canning, whether it's 1 year or 30 years. And if you have any questions, just let me know down below in the description box.
I hope y'all enjoyed the video and got something out of it. Let me know down below if you have any questions. I'll have all my links down below for tested sites and recipes. If you need some kind of question, if you have any kind of questions, or if you would like to see some more canning videos and what kind, let me know down below. Make sure you get the Ball Blue book and read over it. It has all kinds of information telling you how to can. Also, it has stuff about freezing in here, dehydrating. It has lots of recipes in here, not just canning. So make sure you pick this up first of all, and it will give you lots of information, and you can always go back to your book. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I want to thank Jenny and the Miller Life Kitchen for hosting, and I will have all the information linked down below in the description box. So I hope you will plan to can. So let me know down below any questions or anything you want to see more about canning. So I hope y'all have a wonderful and blessed week, and I'll see y'all in the next video.